Welcome to a very special and slightly spooky bonus episode of Family Twist.
Today, we're introducing you to some incredible guests from our other podcast, Horror Heals. Think of it like opening a creaky door to another room in the haunted mansion that is our life together.
We started Horror Heals to explore how horror movies, the bloody, creepy, stabby ones, can actually help people heal from trauma, grief, anxiety, and even family drama.
Which makes this crossover episode a no-brainer. Get it? Brains, zombies. These stories are full of heart and guts, sometimes real guts.
We're sharing clips from some of our favorite Horror Heals conversations. You'll meet a legendary final girl, a monster doll creator, a veteran artist, a cult movie icon, a creepy doll maker, and a witch. Well, someone who plays one on screen.
And after each clip, we'll reflect on why their stories matter to Family Twist listeners. Because healing doesn't always come from a DNA match. Sometimes it comes from horror movies, hot glue guns, and haunted conventions.
First up, we're honored to share a clip from our conversation with Adrienne King. Yes, the final girl from the original Friday the 13th. Adrienne talked to us about the trauma she experienced after the movie, including a terrifying stalker, and how horror conventions and fan love helped her return to herself and the spotlight.
It is fun to be here. You guys were fabulous.
Thank you. We're so thrilled because the Friday the 13th family has been so important to our journey, not just for this podcast, but our other podcast, which brought us from California to New England because we met Kendall's birth family through a DNA test while we were in California.
It was 7 years since I found my biological family. I knew nothing about my birth except that I was adopted by my parents when I was 2 months old. It was a private adoption.
Was it in New England then?
I was born in Arkansas and never knew I had any ties to New England when I found my biological family, that I was conceived here. My mother and father were 15 and 16 when I was conceived. My mother's family moved to Arkansas. That's where she had me, and I was adopted to a family in Arkansas. When I found my half brother, who'd been looking for me since 1988, my dad and two of my dad's other three children live in New England. We came out to visit, and I found them in August of 2017. We came to visit in October, and on the plane ride back home to San Francisco, Corey looks over at me and says, "We're moving there." Like, it was an epiphany, and it was surreal.
Immediately felt the connection.
Definitely with my father's side.
I'd known there was always this hole in Kendall's heart that we needed to fill because there was just this mystery. There was a puzzle piece missing. And I just thought, surely there's got to be others out there. And we were right. One of the first things that Kendall and I bonded over when we started dating was a mutual love of horror movies. And I think we've always felt a little bit like outsiders, as gay people, and horror movies have always been solace to us. So then fast forward to that first visit, meeting his birth family here on the East Coast. Guess what was also happening that weekend? A horror convention.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'd had a conversation with his sister on his father's side as well. She revealed to us that she's a huge horror fan. Yeah. Named her son Gage after Pet Sematary. Mm-hmm. And so a couple of conversations with him. Here I am at a horror con in Sacramento, and CJ Graham is there. And I quickly, because we're so excited, I'm telling the story to everybody. I gave him the minute-long version of finding Kendall's family, and it's so fun that his half-sister is a huge horror fan. He's like, "Give me your phone." Calls her.
Yeah.
And it's one of those cons where I think it was the Friday night version, so it's like 10 o'clock there, which means it's like 1 o'clock in the morning here.
Right.
She didn't answer, but he left her this amazing voicemail.
She didn't answer. She's got it for forever.
Signed a hockey mask for them. It was just, it was beautiful.
Friday the 13th family is amazing.
Here we are in Worcester, Mass. In October
Worcester, Rock and Shock.
Exactly.
Yeah. Gina. I love Gina.
Cool con. I had never heard of it, because we hadn't traveled much to the East Coast, but it's like,
right.
When in Rome.
Yep.
I'm not going to miss a horror con. So Kendall's brother and sister and two of the nephews came along, were nice enough to indulge us, and got to share the story with Amy Steele. She was so sweet about it. with John Carl Buechler, while he was still with us. Then the whole family met Kane. And we've got a group photo with him. And we just consider Kane part of the family at this point because he was there at the very beginning of this reunion. Each time I've seen him, he remembers the story. He remembers who I am and the whole situation. And such a good heart.
Great guy. Truly the best people in the horror genre.
Yeah.
Because all of us, I think, relate to being underdogs or having gone through some kind of trauma in our life. And I think we bond on that with each other. So many of my fans have become very good friends. It's not, I'm on this side of the table, you're on that side of the table. To me, we listen and we share and we feel. I give what I get. And it's always beautiful. I never meet anyone who comes up to the table with bad energy,
Yeah. Right.
Right.
So it's all about us healing each other almost.
It was kismet meeting you for the first time because I was in some flashy blue. You were in some flashy blue. We totally matched and made for a great photo. I gave you the 30-second version of Kendall's story. You were so sweet. And it was just, I just knew you would.
Great story. And I relate to it so specifically when you said healing that little part of your heart that you think you're fine and you've gone through whatever therapy you've gone through to get through it. And you have a partner who understands and gives you the love you need. But it's not until you actually find what it is that you don't even know you're missing and you feel that beautiful puzzle piece right there. And that happened to me in 2004. My first convention was a chiller convention. It was January. My first one, I didn't even have 8x10. So the fans were lined up. It was January outside. And everybody was like, where have you been for the past 20 odd years? Without social media, how would one know that I was hiding from a stalker? How would anyone know I went into voiceovers and looping instead of on camera because I still had anxiety about going on camera? I shared just a tiny bit of that story that day on stage for the first time. There were hundreds packed into that room, and Betsy Palmer was there, and so was Amy. You could have heard a pin drop. I heard sobbing. And at that moment, I realized I wasn't alone. That little puzzle piece you were talking about, I felt it. I felt my heart happy. It was because I realized that everything I'd gone through maybe was for a reason. And maybe the empathy I was able to garner through my experience, I could possibly share with everyone out there who, like me, had gone through some trauma or had survived something. No one goes through this lifetime without some kind of trauma. No one gets through life unscathed. And I think it's a matter of how you get back to your whole self. That is the key, allowing yourself to heal.
For Family Twist listeners, Adrian's journey might feel familiar. Whether you're reconnecting with birth family or rebuilding after trauma, there's something incredibly powerful about realizing you're not alone and finding a community that helps heal those missing pieces.
Next up is Jennifer Ginty, an entrepreneur and horror fan who lives with complex PTSD. In a moment of, I need to throw something, but safely, she created Moody, a plush doll with detachable limbs that helps kids and adults process big emotions without, smashing actual furniture.
So I'm a single mom and I live with complex PTSD. And one day I was in a therapeutic group and I was really frustrated with my symptoms. And I was like, I wish I had a monster that I could just rip apart and throw across the room and bang against the wall. And the group were like, yeah, you should have that. And I thought about it and I went home, and I'm not a seamstress, a sewer or anything, but I put together this monster and I named him PTSD Pete. And his arms and legs and head came up. I made them Velcro. And I used Pete quite a bit. And I thought, this would probably help a lot of other people, and especially kids, because as they're growing and learning how to cope with big feelings, I think Moody can be a great buddy for them. So I started an accelerator program during COVID. We had just closed down, and I started an accelerator program called E4All, and it's in Massachusetts. Anybody who has a business idea, podcast, that kind of thing, it's an insanely excellent program. And I figured out all the things I needed to do and created Moody. And so I've tested Moody, and families love them, therapists love them, teachers are having great response to them in their classrooms. And it's just been healing for me as well, because I've really dived into what my healing journey is. And they're a buddy for me. And it's something that I can focus on and continue to help others to better understand emotion.
Yeah. I think that's so important when people find that thing that, that can help people, that drives their passion, and they do it. It's like you understand what you went through as a kid, what you go through as an adult with PTSD. It's what can I do? What can I do to make a difference? What's something that hasn't been done before? And you did it.
Yes. Yeah. And I love it. Being an entrepreneur is difficult. It's a long journey. And I find myself not being in control of things, which can be triggering. I can't control the loan I'm waiting on. I can't control the water time that I have to do because it's in China. A lot of things about being an entrepreneur are difficult. Again, Moody has been there for me to really focus on what can I do for others while I don't have control of what's happening in my world, right? So I created a YouTube channel that has Moody Talks, and I picked an emotion a month, and I go through what are the words that you use when you think about this emotion, and then go through coping skills that you can use with these different emotions.
Jennifer's story is such a perfect family twist moment because she turns something painful into something helpful. Like so many of us who've taken a rough start and said, okay, but what can I do with this? The answer, apparently, it's Velcro limbs and monster hugs, and we love that.
Our next guest is Erie Earl. Yes, that's his artist nom de plume, and yes, it's perfect. Earl is a military veteran who creates eerie, atmospheric, miniature art. He found healing not just through making creepy little haunted houses, but by connecting with other veteran artists who speak the same language. Creativity, pain, well, and a little bit of black humor.
My wife knew I needed a hobby because of my own struggles and the therapeutic value of art and creating and getting those things out. So that I was doing something therapeutic that was good for me, which in turn was good for our entire family in our house here. When the art finds the person, you're validated that it is touching to someone else, that those emotions that you felt are shared by others. About a year ago, I actually joined a nonprofit group that is a group of veterans that are artists. I'm on the board now. It's Artists in Arms. And we all did that same, this is therapeutic for all of us. We don't do art therapy. It's just like we do art and it's therapeutic. In the military, you don't necessarily find that support group peers. We have this group now. It's good for us to be able to be creative, but to support each other. And it's real military word here, the camaraderie, but it's continued camaraderie and having community where whatever reason you weren't supported before, but now you are. And of course, when you're supporting other artists with their works, then we're able to collaborate and helping each other, number one, have some confidence in what we're doing and showing other folks that you're creative. Because times people think art for artists and they go, you must do paintings and sculpture that are in the museum. But art is anything you create.
Earl reminds us that healing doesn't always come through a dramatic reunion. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's tiny, and sometimes it's about building something with your hands, especially when words fail. If you've ever found peace in making or mending, His story will haunt you in the best way.
Okay, grab your tissues and your silver bullets for our next guest. Andre Gower, star of The Monster Squad and creator of Wolfman's Got Nards, shared one of the most powerful stories we've ever heard on either podcast. It's about how Monster Squad became a lifeline for a family with a son with severe autism.
You just didn't realize like why or how or what the phenomenon was. And we realized that when people watch the Monster Squad in particular, they really connected with something and it never left. And it stayed with them either their whole life and became something that was an anchor. It was an anchor in their life. And they can always fall back on that. You're climbing up an ice wall and you got or a rock wall and you got a piton, and if your other one coming, you could always go back down to that anchor piton and go a different route. Or if this one falls out, this one will catch you. And I think people use their horror films and their horror stories and their fandom as their kind of like anchor piton. And that's their connection with the world. And a piton is a connection with the earth. But so it's a good metaphor there, but we see that a lot. And I could probably, I wish I remember other names, but probably at least a few dozen, but there's at least 8 or 10 amazing stories that I've had parents come up to me and say, "Hey, I'm a big fan." I'm like, "Oh, thanks, cause that's what you're here for. You're at a screening." And that's what I think he is. But let me explain about my son. My son is 7, 8, 10 years old, whatever, severely autistic. And, every day for us, I remember this one story is at South Lamar Alamo Draft House, and I hung out with this guy, all weekend, and it was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he told me this story about his son. He goes, "I've always been a horror fan. Monster Squad's a favorite movie, and this is great that you're here. But my life really is tough because our son is severely mentally disabled. 22 hours of every day is an absolute nightmare for my wife and I." And I was like, "Man, I'm really sorry about that. That's really unfortunate." And he goes, I've always been a horror fan, so I have to go off to my own time and I watch my horror movies, and I usually watch Monster Squad. Because when if you've ever taken care of someone that's either injured or dying or infirm or whatever, it wears on you. It really does. I had that experience with my dad, and you think you can handle it. You get to a point where like, I just can't, I just crack. You wear down. And I can't imagine doing this with your own child for so long when it's really, really a bad situation. And he goes, "So I have to go in my room and shut the door and I watch my movies, and I usually watch Monster Squad." And one day I was in there because my son was having a really, really hard day and I had to take my time out. The father had to take a time out. And he goes, and I had Monster Squad on, and he was just throwing a fit. And so I had to go in my, room and watch it. And I realized the fit had stopped, and I turned around and my son was standing behind the couch watching Monster Squad. Silent. And he goes, "My son is never silent." And I was like, "Whoa." And he goes, and then he came around and watched the movie. And now that's his settling thing, is to watch your movie. I was like, I don't know how to respond to that, because I thought this was your story, because you said this was your timeout and you're kind of like recentering for yourself to take care. He goes, but now he goes, "My son." And I was like, okay, this is almost the first kind of experience I had with a story like that. And then I've had, a dozen more, but I was like, what do you think is it? Is it the sounds? Is it the colors? Does he get what's going on in the movie? He goes, "I don't know. And I don't care." He goes, "There's something about it that he is connected, and that gives me an hour and a half. That gives me and my wife an hour and a half break." And he's enjoying it, because you can tell, but we're also getting a downtime. So it was, I was like, what are you going to do with it? I was fresh and dealing with something. I was like, it's still fascinating to me. And then I heard a dozen more stories exactly like that. I wonder if it's the scariness, if it's the adventure. And I think everybody's different and with their reaction to it. But for some reason, I know Monster Squad, because I can talk about that as an expert, has that effect on, a certain group of people. And it's fascinating to me. I'd love to dive into the biology and the psychology of that. But I think as a whole, I think that also works as well. Horror movies are also, that was a very niche type of thing, but talking about horror movies and healing, I think horror movies are an escape for, a lot of people, a lot of fans.
That one hits hard. For so many of us in the Family Twist community, we know how powerful it is to find something that anchors us, especially in chaos. Whether it's a beloved film or a new sibling, Those unexpected lifelines help keep us connected, grounded, and human.
Now for something creepy and charming. Catherine Bonetti, the artist behind Deviled Eyed Dumplings. Her haunted dolls help her manage social anxiety and connect with people who totally get the joy of creepy crafts.
I kind of like to sit down, and it helps me, as you know, I have a lot of like social anxiety and stuff. When I sit there and I paint them, it just feels good, and then when I sell them, like someone messages me, they're like, "Oh, I like your art." It makes me feel good. It's not the part of selling it. I don't care about that. It's the part that someone likes my art. And it makes me feel good. It's kind of like a little boost to me. Gets me like out of my shell a little bit.
Well, I was initially surprised, when I reached out to you and you mentioned the social anxiety, because when I approached your booth at Monster Mania, you and your boyfriend were just so engaging, and it was a very memorable conversation. At the time, we weren't doing this podcast, but we have our other podcast, Family Twist, and I gave you both cards, and you were very, very kind, and it was great. But now after like, oh, weird that she said that she's got social anxiety, I'm like, wait a minute. She was at home. She was in her element. She was, like she was around family.
Yeah, it's exactly what my boyfriend said. He said, we found our people. And I'm like, these are my people. It's just nice. I can talk freely there, and I can say, yeah, I make creepy dolls. And if I say that anywhere else, it's like you get like silence afterwards where people just kind of look at you like, okay. And like, they don't know what to say next. But when you say it at Monster Mania, people get it, and they'll start telling you about what they like. And, it's when you find your people, you get like this little bit of happiness.
Catherine's story is for anyone who's ever felt like the weird kid in the room until they finally walked into the right room. Horror conventions gave her the community and validation she craved. And for many of us, finding our people feels a little like coming back from the dead.
Our last guest is actor Nate Geik, whose childhood was marked by abuse and emotional trauma. As a child, he escaped into movies. As an adult, he found power in playing a witch and reclaiming his sense of control over his own narrative.
We're very interested to hear your story about growing up and not being in a very great situation with your mom.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, I've always been a very introverted kind of person. I think part of that stems from not having a great childhood. My biological mother was emotionally abusive, sometimes physically abusive. We no longer speak because of these reasons, although it didn't happen until maybe 6 years ago when I came to the conclusion that it just wasn't going to be good for my well-being. But when I was living with my mother, my brother and I were raised by our grandparents, basically, and they kind of became like our mom and dad. So I was very close with my grandparents. When I was in the 5th grade, we went to live with my mother. That was a rough transition. There was a lot of yelling going on, a lot of fights. I very often would retreat to my bedroom where I had a TV. Movies became a big escape for me, not just horror movies, but all kinds of movies. I was trying to remember when I first started loving horror, like what was the earliest memory of that? It's not a horror movie by any means, but Margaret Hamilton as the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz. I was just so fascinated by her when I was little. I mean, of course she was scary because it was a great performance, but I just thought she was cool. From that point on, I think I became obsessed with witches and anything witchcraft related. It's like, who wouldn't want to go fly on a broomstick? She has these flying monkeys, and this girl took her shoes and she just wants them back. It's like, I guess I felt for her a little bit too, which is maybe a little disturbing.
Hey, you have to have empathy for everyone.
I would argue that The Wizard of Oz is a little bit of a horror movie. I mean, it's certainly one of the first things that kids are exposed to that could fall into that category. And it's definitely one that me and my siblings watched with our grandparents that we adored. And yeah, the witch was scary. I mean, those flying monkeys, were scary, but like you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that Margaret Hamilton and that performance, she's on screen for such a little bit of time, and the impact she makes and how that has gone on to inspire generations of witches. It's amazing. I was a journalist a million years ago, and there's this movie theater in the suburbs of Chicago. And the name escapes me, but they do theme theaters, and they have a Wizard of Oz themed one. And the owner has one of the pairs of the original slippers. I think there's 4 left in existence. And he got called away. I was left alone in a room with a pair of slippers. I could be in jail right now. Or suitcase Judy Garland's. The Wicked Witch of the West was kind of your inspiration to and love of witches.
Yeah. I talked to my husband about this several times. There's that one scene where the Wicked Witch leaves Dorothy and locks her basically in her chamber, and it's very emotional. And I feel like I can relate to that so much because it reminds me of my childhood, even though most of the time I chose to go to my room. I felt trapped at the time. It just really hits home for me every time. I said to my husband, maybe that's why I'm so fascinated with witches, because I want to be the witch and have that control instead of being the quote unquote victim, if you will, if that makes sense.
If totally
For sure. And I'm not in any way trying to be your therapist here, but that scene you're talking about, I mean, if the witch did anything cruel in that movie, it would be that scene, because all of a sudden you see Aunt Em on the crystal ball, and then all of a sudden then it turns into the witch playing a trick on Dorothy, and it's like, here's a glimpse of hope, and I'm snatching it away.
Absolutely. Getting back to the whole horror heals aspect, what I think is really great about horror is how it really seems to have this power to bring people together. I know you've talked a lot about going to horror conventions and things like that. I am a horror convention virgin. I want so badly to go to one, and we plan to once we can afford it.
Nate's story is raw, real, and powerful. So many of us know what it's like to step away from a toxic family relationship and redefine what family even means. Sometimes healing looks like saying goodbye. Sometimes it looks like dressing up as a witch and finally taking control of your own damn broomstick.
So that's our Horror Heals treat for you. 6 amazing humans who've taken fear, pain, and trauma and turned it into art, comfort, and connection.
If you want to hear the full episodes with any of today's guests, just look up Horror Heals wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every Tuesday, and links for these episodes are in the show notes for this episode.
Thanks for spending this twisted little detour with us. Whether you're here for the found family feels or the creepy catharsis, we're so glad you're part of our story.
And remember, no matter how strange your path has been, you're never too far gone to find healing or to enjoy a good jump scare.
Until next time, stay spooky, stay safe, and keep your hearts open.
And maybe your closets too, just in case a monster wants to say hi.
The Family Twist podcast is presented by Savoir Faire Marketing Communications and produced by How the Cow Ate the Cabbage, LLC.